Joan Bergin, costumer of the Vikings. You just left the warring barbarians. Just left the set there. Tell us, you're in Ireland. Give us the setup.
I'm in Ireland on an unusually warm, sunny day. I might even have to take my hat off. And I have been on Blessington Lake, where the Vikings are fighting the Anglo-Saxons.
Wow.
So either side of a really beautiful lake with. It's good to be working and paid as well on a day like this.
So you don't just design the costumes and then say everybody wears these and go home. You stay there. This is an ongoing job that you nurture throughout production, right?
Very much so. Yes. I mean, I can't be on set all day because I have a big workshop. So I have to get back to the workshop to continue designing, because episodic television is merciless. You know, you just finish a war on a Monday and it's the banquet on a Wednesday, so you do have to keep going.
So I'm sure you tailor the costumes to the characters, but do you tailor the costumes to the actors as well? Do you actually take into consideration things like the personality of Travis Fimmel and the personality of Catherine Winnick, etc.?
Completely. I mean, it's always been a thing of mine that Stanislavski calls it blending the actor with the acted, and like in their case, it's blending what they bring to the character with what I read the character to be and what they read the character to be.
Give us some examples of that.
Well, for example, with, Lagerta, who starts as a farmer's wife and bit by bit becomes both, well, she was always a shield maiden, but a powerful shield maiden and an earl, so her clothes absolutely have to portray this. And Catherine Winnick is, you can see her growing into the clothes and the furs. It's amazing what the clothes do if you're lucky to help the actor.
Excuse me, I'm sneezing here.
Bless you.
Okay, go on.
It does, I think you're never successful as a designer if an actor feels a costume is imposed upon them. You do lean over backwards to marry what they'd like, what you'd like, and importantly, what the writer and director appear to be striving towards.
So, how do we even know what the Vikings dressed like? I mean, their villages, for the most part, don't survive. No. Their boats, for the most part, don't. Certainly, their clothes don't survive. So, how do you know
what they wore? Well, there is very little. I mean, there are from the grave finds in Scandinavia in the big grave settlements, and the tiniest piece of cloth which holds the pin they held their cloaks with, that survives in lots of cases. And nowadays people can take that, and with the miracles of a lab, they can, tell what berries it was dyed from. And we actually have even gone that far. We dye the clothes with the berries that they had at that time.
No, you actually go to that extent?
Yeah.
Wow.
So what really... Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I want to hear more of this. It's fascinating.
Yeah, history have granted me the great gift of a dye room on this one, because this is one of the things with very old work, like early medieval work, that the colors are so strange. They kind of completely marry with nature. And if you get a color wrong, it's like a note in music, watching it, you go, twang, that color is just not correct. So we strive very hard to get that. But I think because I've explained it and had to think about it a few times, people will say, oh, but that's not exactly the Viking costume. So I always say our workshop were the brats in the village, who wish they could have gone to design school. So we take what was available as much as I can research, and we run with it. Otherwise 3 series later everybody would be in the same dress with an apron over it. So it's variations on the theme.
Now I happen to know, Joan, that you probably did not use the color derivation technique of the color purple, for example. I saw a TV special a few months ago that said that the reason it was the royal color, the reason throughout Europe and history as it emerged, was that it was so difficult to make and had to be made, like a lot of dyes, with urine, with animal or human urine. And
Yes.
series from a costume point of view.
Now, I lost that link in between.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you're free.
But I did get the bit of it where you said why purple was a royal colour, you know, the way Henry VIII was the only person who could eat a swan. I mean, the royals had to take to themselves special things which made them stand apart, and purple was a very difficult colour to get hold of. So I've just introduced the colour purple in the royal personages, of which we have quite a few, considering they were a democratic society.
Now let's talk about the Queen there. Let's talk about Catherine Winnick. She, one of the great surprises of this series when we're watching it is you expect from a costume point of view to see all these barbarians in their animal skins and their rough cloth, and you've dressed her so beautifully with the furs and the ornate, the jeweled splendor of a real queen. At the TV Academy event recently, the program was put up on a big screen, you know, mammoth, almost like IMAX size, and to see your costumes in that perspective, the detail, especially when they zoomed in on her. Wow, that was spectacular. Tell us about her costume.
Well, hers in particular, and she does bring a lot to the table, as Americans say. I mean, she just does not stand there and wait to be costumed. I've put an awful lot of work into her clothes because I have found, because they spun all their own, you know, tweeds, and they mixed flax, which they grew into it. So I used the flax for decoration on it. And I suppose I've made choices for them that as they got more important, they were allowed to use more of the stuff around them. And with her, you know, Charlemagne, who was around that time, said, I dress like this so you may know who I am. You know, therefore implying that he'd have gone round in dirty jeans, were it not for the fact that he wanted people to recognize the grandeur. So you did. There was no television, no PR, so you had to present yourself as, you know, that person.
Oh, that's interesting. How many of the costumes are rented? How many of them are created in your lab there?
We, at the moment, over the series, we've created about 500 to 600 costumes. We've really made all the costumes for the principals, and then we rent for all the armies and for the people in the village. But one of the things I think about the Vikings is the success of extras, how they look, because so often people say they're the extras. But I think if your extras look great and embody the spirit of the thing, you're halfway there, because it places your characters that you've put the work into within the context of where they came from.
Where do you come down on the award show controversy of rented costumes being styled by the designer? Let me give you a good example. I believe it was the King's Speech at the Oscars where the costumes were all rented. But the costume designer argued, this may have been rented, but I put it all together. I created a look. I may not have actually, sewn that scarf or that cape, but I put the look together. That's what a designer does, so therefore I get nominated. Those films do end up being nominated for costume design, and I'm sure the same controversy rages at the Emmys. But where do you come on that whole thing when, let's say, a costume designer and their team doesn't actually make any costumes at all, but does pull a look together?
Yes, I mean, in many ways, I often think what a good costume designer is an editor. You know, they conceive a look, how they want the show to look, and into that they customize stuff around them and then make a lot of the stuff in our case here. But it is a difficult one because no show, I don't care what the budget is, can make from start to finish for every single person on screen. So where do you draw the line? I suppose I do think one needs to have designed some of the costumes, ideally, yes.
Which costumes on Vikings are you most proud of? When you see them up on screen in the finished show when it's airing, you go,
There is there's a very witty piece of writing between the Anglo-Saxon wedding and Flucky and Helga's wedding, you know, so it's like the hippie Viking wedding and the formal gold, you know, with the woman with the wimple under her chin. And I think in ways that conveys a lot of the amazing similarity in all those cultures at the time. And if anything, that makes it harder because you're trying to pick this. Sometimes the audience mightn't even notice it, or some scholar will blog, you know, that that pin in that cloak was not quite correct. And you think, listen, mate, you come into my workshop with 1,500 Vikings waiting for pins and tell me that the next day.
you'll sick those Vikings on him to solve that issue, man. Joan Bergin, thank you for chatting with us. Good luck to you at the Emmys. It must be a great job that you've got because you get to create a world. It's a vast, vast cast. So you have armies to clothe yourself, and obviously the show is becoming a huger and huger hit each season. It was just renewed for season 3, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.